I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting, and first item is disclosures of pecuniary interest and nature thereof. I'll ask any member if they have a pecuniary interest they'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course you can declare one at a time if you need to. Next is additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda, and we do have one addition to the agenda, and it has been moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor, that the Council agenda be amended by adding the following. Agenda item 6.2, Striking Committee Report, Committee Appointments. Any questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That moves us then on to item 4, adoption of minutes. And I have a motion moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Schreider, that Council adopt the minutes of the Council meeting of January 14, 2019 as presented. Questions or comments to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Moves us on to the Committee of the Whole minutes, January 14, 2019, and Capital Budget minutes, January 22, 2019. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rich, seconded by Councillor Carr, that Council note and file the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of January 14, 2019, and the Capital Budget minutes, meeting minutes of January 22, 2019 as presented. Questions or comments to either set of minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. So that moves us on to item 6, report of municipal officers and committees, and we have one item there. It's a staff report, RFQ Southampton Sanitary Sewer Infiltration and Inflow Study. And does the Director of Infrastructure and Development have any comments at this time? Nope. So we have a resolution. It's moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Schreider, that BM Ross and Associates Limited be awarded the engineering services contract for RFQ 2018-64105505 in the amount of $60,590 plus applicable HST, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to sign the necessary contract documents. Questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, that moves us on to motions and notices of motion, and that moves us on to the addition, item 6.2, and that's committee appointments. And I have a motion moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor, that Council approve the recommended appointments to boards and committees as outlined in the Striking Committee report dated February 11, 2019. Are there any questions or comments to the resolution? Being none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, and that moves us then on to motions and notices of motion. And so we have one motion and one notice of motion. So the motion we will read tonight and debate. And here it is. It has been moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Whereas the town of Saugeen Shores believes that building modern infrastructure is important and that good quality infrastructure supports job creation and helps attract businesses and residents to our community and communities across the province of Ontario, and whereas recreation infrastructure is one of the most important core investments that can be made into the prosperity, health, and security of urban and rural communities, and whereas the need for infrastructure renewal projects far exceeds the capital available in municipalities for investment in recreation infrastructure, and whereas recreation infrastructure is often put to the bottom of the list as other infrastructure takes priority. In fact, there has not been a meaningful recreation infrastructure program since 2008, and whereas the province of Ontario places long-term borrowing restrictions on municipalities, and whereas Saugeen Shores does not have the borrowing capacity to fund these large-scale projects, and whereas some municipalities do not have the capacity to fundraise and borrow to one-third of project costs, but rely on other levels of government for remaining partnership funding, and whereas while the town of Saugeen Shores welcomes the inclusion of recreation infrastructure funds through the gas tax fund, it is apparent that gas tax funds alone are not sufficient to support large-scale recreation infrastructure projects, and whereas the town of Saugeen Shores agrees with both Parks and Recreation Ontario with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario that the infrastructure gap will continue to grow, especially once all the municipal asset plans are completed, and whereas both federal and provincial government could leave a positive and lasting impact on rural communities by helping municipalities to renovate or build new recreation facilities and in the process create cost savings to our health system. After all, health is a provincial expense, and as citizens live healthier lifestyles and maintain healthy bodies, this leads to less frequent visits to doctors' offices, hospital emergency departments, and rehabilitation centers, and consequently less costs toward medical costs, and whereas in 2016 the Federation of Canadian Municipalities study found that nearly half of all types of sport and recreation facilities in Canada are in fair or poor condition with a replacement value of $23 billion across Canada, and whereas in Ontario the replacement value for aging pools, arenas, and community centres in fair or poor condition in Ontario is estimated to be $6 billion. Parks and Recreation Ontario, and whereas the province of Ontario has endorsed the Framework for Recreation in Canada 2015 Pathways to Wellbeing, and that the vision for the framework is a Canada where everyone is engaged in meaningful, accessible recreation experiences, and that the first goal of the framework is that the governments should enable participation in physically active recreation, and whereas the Framework for Recreation in Canada has as priority 4.3 as follows: enable communities to renew recreational infrastructure as required and to meet the need for green spaces by securing dedicated government funding at all levels for the necessary development, renewal, and rehabilitation of facilities and outdoor spaces, and whereas through the Investing in Canada plan, the Government of Canada is investing over $180 billion over 12 years in infrastructure projects across Canada, with these investments being made by 14 federal departments and agencies, and whereas the Government of Canada and Ontario signed a bilateral agreement on March 14, 2017 and created the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan, and be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores requests that the Government of Canada and the Province of Ontario move forward with accepting applications for funding agreed to by the Governments of Canada and the Province of Ontario under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program to help address the recreation and culture capital infrastructure deficit that currently exists across Canada, and further, that this resolution and background council report be forwarded to all Ontario municipalities, provincial and federal governments, local MPs and MPPs, Parks and Recreation Ontario, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, requesting their support. Want me to read it again? Okay. In French. Questions or comments? Councillor Schreider.
Thank you. Through you. I just think that this is just a fantastic letter, and you know, hats off to Vice Deputy Mayor. I think it provides knowledge and education to those that are not in the municipal sector and that maybe don't see our barriers that we face. A lot of it, and a lot of it is funding, and a lot of it is partnership. We had a great report tonight with regards to our asset management program, and sometimes our asset management program shows us that we need help to maintain our assets. So I think this is great. Obviously, I'll be supporting it 100%, and thank you.
The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mayor, and I just want to thank you for your comments, Councillor Schreider. I appreciate them, and did a fair amount of work on this, and obviously I know it's long, but there are two things I want to mention in here, and that I did have meaningful discussions with Parks and Recreation Ontario and with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and in length, and they help provide me with some of this content, obviously. And I do want to say to you that Parks and Recreation Ontario and AMO very clearly stated to me that their plans are to step up the lobbying process to the provincial and federal governments in 2019 to open up that funding for recreation infrastructure. There's two mentions in here. $180 billion over 12 years was approved back in 2017. The bilateral agreement was signed in March 14th, 2017. So it's up to the provincial government right now. The feds have said we've got $180 billion here to allocate, and recreation infrastructure is there. And so the money's, my understanding, Mr. Mayor, and I'm glad you had that meeting with the parliamentary system. I believe you can speak to it in a minute. I suppose you will be. But I understand maybe the funding will be starting to open up this fall, and we've been waiting for this day for a long time. The last time it was, there was a program, meaningful program, was 2008, 11 years ago. So we think about the pool, and we think about the ball complex, and we think about the Southampton Town Hall. Culture's included in this funding envelope, so it's coming. The basket of dollars is smaller at the front end, where it gets a lot larger as we get into the program. But I just think this is a golden opportunity for us to lobby. We get penalized sometimes because of our high income and our low taxation. Well, this is going to be a good opportunity, and I'd like to help lead the way, Mr. Mayor, as the Vice Deputy Mayor, to head up the lobbying process and help around the table, obviously. But I think this is a golden opportunity.
And as you mentioned, we did have that opportunity to do a little bit of lobbying with the parliamentary assistant, Councillor Mayette, and I, to the Minister of Infrastructure a week or two ago, I guess, and we had a very positive discussion with the provincial ministry on this subject, and indeed we did receive some assurance that funding would flow on these matters this year, and that there was some of the initial tranches would start to become available, and in the latter part of the year, perhaps some of this recreation-oriented funding. So the province is committed. They've committed, and interestingly enough, and important to note, the current government has committed to the same funding numbers as the previous government had put forward. At least that was the message we got from the parliamentary assistant. So I think we're sort of where we were before, and now we may see some funding flow. So that, combined with the planning and work we're doing just tonight through our own budget, and then opportunities coming forward for funding, and combined with a good lobbying effort, and this is part of that, is certainly called for, and I hope we could see some success. Further comments? Seeing any, then I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. And we have the what is a notice of motion on the blind line, which we will discuss at our next regular council meeting. So, all right. So we have item 8 now, bylaws, and I will read the resolution. It's been moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Dave Mayette, that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 11th day of February 2019. Bylaw 1/9/2019 being a bylaw to impose a fee for a sewer connection charge and or water connection charge for lands located on concession 6. Bylaw 2/10/2019 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 63/2015 being the bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. 3/11/2019 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75/2006 by Barry's Construction and Insulation Limited for lands described as Block 90, Part Lots 18 and 20, Plan 11, and Part 1, Reference Plan 3R9422, Town of Saugeen Shores. 4/12/2019 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75/2006 by Tom Schillinglaw for 154 South Rankin Street, Town of Saugeen Shores. 5/13/2019 being a bylaw to adopt amendment number 12 to the official plan 90/2012 affecting all lands within the town of Saugeen Shores. 6/14/2019 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75/2006 affecting all lands within the town of Saugeen Shores. 7/15/2019 being a bylaw to establish a 0.3 meter reserves in the Lord Elgin Estate subdivision as part of public highways. 8/16/2019 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75/2006 by 263546 Ontario Incorporated, care of Richard Leader for 72 Bruce Road 25, Town of Saugeen Shores. And 9/17/2019 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meetings of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. I'll ask members at this stage, are there any these bylaws that you would like to draw out of the resolution for individual discussion? We'll start with Councillor Rich.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to remove 3, bylaw 11/2019, zoning amendment from Barry's Construction for discussion.
Okay, we'll pull that one out by consent. Councillor Carr?
Yes, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull out bylaw 16-2009 in regards to the rezoning for the applicant.
So bylaws 11 and 16. So we will discuss those two and then return to the main motion. So we have pulled out then 11/2019 being the bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw number 75/2006 by Barry's Construction and Insulation Limited. And Councillor Rich, do you have a comment?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this kind of feels a little bit reminiscent of where we were with Market Street. One of my concerns is that because it's not clear in our official plan right now as to how we're going to deal with townhouses and infills, that this could be challenged. We could go to the OMB and then in fact lose, be out the court costs, and then have the houses built in the same way anyway. I think that Mr. Doyle from Barry's Construction made a reasonable argument with regard to how other municipalities do infilling, and maybe it's a discussion that we need to have as a group as to whether or not we want a lot of infilling in our community. But the one thing I would say is that the county planners gave us a suggestion, and what we've brought forward is not what they suggested to us. So I would maybe make a motion that we would go with a county planner's suggestion, and thus avoid any chance of being taken to the OMB.
Just to be clear on that, it remains appealable by neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. By approving it as recommended by the planner, you don't avoid the risk of appeal to the LPAT. It can be appealed by neighbors or members of the community, just for clarity. Councillor Mayette.
I'd like to second that motion. And I'll speak to it as well.
Just so we're clear, so that we know what we're talking about. The original recommendation from the planner came with a special provision. It was to rezone the property to be R3 with a special provision. That special provision allowed for a smaller lot coverage. So the return then would be to pass the bylaw as recommended, with those special provisions as recommended by the planner. That's what I'm understanding from the mover and seconder. Okay, so and everyone's clear on that? Take your silence as an absolute yes. Councillor Mayette.
I'm clear on that. And at the time, at the PAC meeting, you may have recalled that I spoke in favor of approving it the way it was presented with the special provision, which is the decreased lot size. And for the reasons stated at that time, I'd just like to reiterate that this does help us meet the infill and intensification targets that we often talk about, but not very often get to live up to. And it not only that, but anytime you can put a house in a different price range, and that price range opens it up to a whole new set of buyers. And there's not many places in Saugeen Shores that a first-time buyer can get into a house for the range that I believe somewhere in the neighborhood. I'm not going to mention a number, but the range that these are going to be in. And by having 4 of them on there, it's going to open it up to a different category. So I stated that at the time, and I stand by that, and I would support it the way it's being proposed.
Okay, thank you. Further comments to the resolution that's now on the floor? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I've thought about this one, and we received a little bit of new information this evening, and I don't very often change my mind on items of this nature because you think, well, you heard the information in the initial application, and I based my decision on I thought was good information, and we see a little bit of new information this evening, and I've given more thought to one of the things I campaigned pretty hard on was affordable housing in the community, and providing housing that kind of meets the income of clientele in our community that can't afford that $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 home. And so I heard Councillor Mayette's comments at the last meeting, and I heard them again this evening, and I appreciate Councillor Rich's comments. I think this provides 4 more units in our community that are more affordable to that segment of the population, and I know there's opposition up in that area, but I think that this type of housing that hopefully will come into that, I'm hoping somewhere probably over 3, but a whole lot less than 4, I'm hoping. But housing in this community is getting very expensive, and we need housing that's a little more affordable, and I think this will provide that. So, I know reversing a decision probably is not going to be all that popular, but I put more thought into it, and this is one I'm going to change my vote on.
Okay, further comments? The important thing that we need is clarity. We lack. The community's expectations are in one place. developers' expectations built by our own documents is somewhere else. And as they come together, they conflict. And we don't have clarity, and it's not fair to the developers, and it's not fair to the property owners in the community. And the property owners in the community don't understand it. Why? And the developers head along a plan and get to a point and think this should work because it works with the documents, and then they run into the community. So whatever we do tonight, and I don't think it's the end of the world one way or the other, frankly, but whatever we do, what we must commit to do is to improve these documents to match community expectation so that when developers, and Barry's Construction are excellent developers in our community, so that when they and every other developer approach this council and this organization, they know what to expect and can develop plans that are appropriate for the community, and we can stand behind it and the people can stand behind it. So let's do that with the official plan coming up, and hopefully not have less of this going forward, which isn't good for anybody really. So we've had you've heard the resolution. I think everybody understands it. So I'll ask all in favor of the resolution. Aye, please. So this is the resolution to amend. This is the resolution that's on the floor right now, moved by Councillor Rich, seconded by Councillor Mayette, to amend the bylaw 11/2019 to bring it in line with the planner's recommendation. You understand what we're voting on? All in favor of that? Opposed? That's great. Okay. So, and that's clear enough for you, Linda? Yes. All right. So then the other one is 16/2019, the bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 75/2006, for 2635 Ontario Incorporated, care of Richard Leader and Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to put a motion forward that I would like us to consider maybe extending this a little bit more, just to allow the applicant maybe a little bit more time to come into compliance with this so that he's able to make other arrangements, as well as maybe allowing for student as well as ourselves to maybe set our bylaw in place that's going to look after this zoning issue that we're running into with this one. So I would like to I'd like to make an amendment to the motion there that we change from the July 1st deadline to the September 1st, 2019 deadline.
So there is a resolution that's been moved by the Councillor Carr, and seconded by Councillor Rich, that bylaw 16/2019 paragraph 3 be amended to read that this bylaw shall be in effect for a period terminating on September 1st, 2019. That resolution is on the floor. I'll take questions or comments to the resolution. Councillor Grace.
All right, I have a question about the work, the security, the $25,000 security to ensure compliance with the temporary bylaw. I guess the compliance, the restoration of the land, is there a timeline on when that would have to be completed? After, I'm assuming the July 1st means they can keep the buses there till July 1st as is, and then is there a timeline on when that restoration work would have to be done by?
The clerk.
Thank you, and through you. There would be a separate agreement between the applicant and the municipality with regards to those securities, outlining what that time frame would be. So right now the time frame has not been set, but I would expect that there would be another agreement come forward for your consideration.
Thank you.
Anything further questions or comments with regard to the resolution currently on the floor? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along with this recommendation, we have a letter from the applicant. This is the only correspondence that I'm aware of that we've had with the applicant. He certainly, he or she or they didn't take the opportunity to address us in person when they had opportunity several times. And in reading this letter, it to me, it makes it quite clear that they have very little intention of complying with this temporary zoning bylaw. This is just to them another step along the process of making this a permanent installation at this property, which is against our current bylaws. And you know, even the questioning of the $25,000 security it's clear that he doesn't want to put that here. They don't want to put this up because they know they have no intention of complying with it. We've given them okay, kids have to go to school, buses have to park somewhere. We can't interrupt the school year. So let's get through the school year while they find an alternate location for this. But this is, to me, very clear. He's not trying to find an alternate location. He's just working on getting an extension again. And I have no doubt in my mind that he'll be back here before September asking for a further extension for another year. And I think we're just being played here. Right? And for that reason, I'm not going to support the amendment to this.
Okay, further comments? Okay, so you're aware of everyone understands what we're voting on here now. This vote is to extend that period that paragraph 3 be amended to read that this bylaw shall be in effect for a period terminating on September 1st, 2019. That's been moved and seconded, so I'll ask all in favor of it. 3 opposed. Defeated. So let's so it's been pulled out, so we'll vote on it separately. So the main motion remains as it is. Bylaw 16/2019 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75/2006 by 263546 Ontario Incorporated, care of Richard Leader, for 72 Bruce Road 25, town of Saugeen Shores. Carried, I guess. Be moved to first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 11th day of February 2019. I just made that up, but I can do it from memory. All right. So, any questions or comments to the resolution? Councillor Rich?
I have a question. So, and just 'cause I've been around now long enough that these kinds of things entertain me. What happens if we don't pass this? They have to take all the buses off there and it's gone? Or do you know what I mean?
Well, this is a zoning. The effect of the zoning bylaw amendment is to provide the temporary zoning relief that will allow the buses to remain there until, as the council has just decided, the 1st of July. So that's the effect of it. If you don't pass it, then the development is out of compliance with the zoning bylaw, and steps have to be taken on another process to deal with that. Okay, so if there's nothing further, I'll ask all in favor. Carried. Okay, so that moves us back then to the main resolution. We pulled those 2 items out and they have been dealt with. So now we are dealing with the motion moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Mayette, dealing with bylaws 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17. Is there any questions or comments with regard to any of those? Being not, then, all in favor? That's carried. All right, and then that moves us on to adjournment, I guess. I'm locked out of this thing. All right, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Smith, that this regular council meeting of February 11, 2019 hereby adjourns at 9:37 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. Have a good evening, everyone.